What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we are doing transfer tips ahead of Game Week 23. So we're going to look at some popular transfers in, out, talk about whether people should be selling them, buying them, or maybe whether there's better options for the similar price or from the same team and stuff like that. So if you do enjoy it, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Let's jump into it. All right, so we'll start off with Bruno Fernandes. Nearly 50,000 transfers in already. Now, I will say I'm recording this before the second round of games. So the likes of Man United versus Brentford, Chelsea versus Brighton and stuff like that, they haven't been played yet. So there's every chance that he does something in the second game as well. Maybe gets an assist, goal and assist, whatever. Comes away with a mega haul. Captainers are super happy. The funny thing is, if this was last season, coming up to Burnley, Southampton, Leeds, Watford, right, that little 4-game week period, we'd almost be saying he's essential. But obviously it's a little bit different this year. Once Ronaldo's back, we're going to assume that Fernandes isn't on penalties. His underlying numbers have come down from last year as well. There's nothing to say that they won't go back up, right? We know the qualities that he has. But in terms of open play goal threat, it's not that massive. In the Villa game, I thought it was like a 4-2-3-1 at times. But then sometimes it was like Fred was a little bit more advanced than Fernandes. Fernandes was dropping deeper to pick the ball up. So I don't even know if he looked like that great of an option. Obviously, the position he got into for the second goal was really good. Pretty fortunate for the first one. So I guess we have to take this from two places, right? One, you already own him, and two, you don't already own him. So if you own him, I actually think you probably keep him until Salah's back, because for most people, he is just a placeholder for Salah. It's going to be very difficult to own both of those players, and there's a lot of cheap midfielders as well that you can consider. Now, we don't know yet when Salah's going to be back. It could be Game Week 24, could be Game Week 25. We'll have to just reassess as we go. But I don't think Fernandes is that bad just to hold on to, right? If for any reason you don't want to get Salah back straight away because he doesn't come back till 25 or whatever, and then in 27 I think he blanks as well, and you really want to risk just not having him, that's not necessarily a bad move. The only way if I had Fernandes that I would sell him, because the fixture run is pretty good, right? Even if Ronaldo's back, he's not that bad to hold on to before you get Salah. The only reason I would sell him is if you really want a captaincy option. So like if you want to swap to like a, I don't know, like a De Bruyne or someone like that, because you prefer to captain him over Fernandes for some upcoming fixtures in 23, 24, 25, then maybe you sell him. But I think you have to reassess your own squad and see what kind of position you're at. If you've then got to save a transfer for Salah, and then you also want to get, I don't know, like Coutinho, Rafinha, Luka Dean, all these players people are talking about, they all take transfers, and it's very easy to just say, I'll just take hits. But if you can reduce the amount of hits you take, that is usually better, right? So unless you need a captain, I'd probably just hold on to him. If you don't own Fernandes, personally, I don't see why you'd bring him in anytime soon, really. I mean, once Ronaldo's back, Fernandes becomes a weaker option. And I'm not saying you go for Ronaldo instead. I just don't think you go for Bruno Fernandes. And there's lots of other players, potentially even cheaper options that could be better in the long term. And I think if I was spending close to kind of 12 million, which is what Fernandes is, as long as I had the extra money, De Bruyne is probably the one I would bring in instead if we're talking about premium midfielders. But for most people, look, you just have to accept he's got his 2 goals. He could get more against Brentford. If you went for him, happy days. If you didn't, it kind of sucks, but it is what it is, and just move on. So if you don't own him, I don't think I'd be buying him right now. And if you do have him, I'd probably just keep him until Salah comes back, unless you really want to captain someone like De Bruyne. Alright, so more people have actually transferred out Mason Mount than have brought in Bruno Fernandes. Now, there's probably a little bit of frustration in that. He's had 60,000 transfers out. Obviously, he didn't play the first game against Man City in the double game week in Game Week 22, which is a bit frustrating. Now, he's not 100% nailed, obviously. Now we see that. We've seen him miss a few games here or there. He's just missed the Man City game. But I think we mostly expect him to start. He probably is one of Chelsea's better attackers. So I would expect him to start the Brighton game. We'll see tonight, right? I'm recording this before, etc. And I would expect him to start the Spurs game. But after that, it's pretty bad for Chelsea players, right? From Game Week 24 to 27, they only have one game. They've got 3 blank game weeks. From Game Week 28, interestingly, they got a really good fixture run. So depending on what happens with blanks and postponements and doubles and stuff over that period, we might again be looking at Chelsea players. But I don't want to get to the stage like earlier on in the season where we're constantly talking about that upcoming fixture run, because the way FPL is going right now, loads of crazy things can happen. So the question is, do we get rid of him before, do you, I don't own him, but do you get rid of him before Spurs at home? Now, this is always going to come down to like a priority basis. So if there's more postponements, or you've got an injury, or you've got suspension, or you need to get a captain in or something like that, that's all probably going to take priority over getting rid of Mason Mount before Spurs at home, a game that he will probably start in. So he's not such an issue that you have to get rid of him this week. But obviously, from game week 24 onwards, he's no good. So if you've got a spare transfer, I do think he is a good transfer or a good player to get rid of. Because Spurs at home is not necessarily a great game. I could see Chelsea scoring, but I don't think they're going to score a huge amount. So then you're hoping that Mount gets in the action. And to be fair, looking at his expected goals numbers and expected assists, if they score, there's every chance he's involved, which is why I don't think there's a rush to get rid of him. If you are considering getting rid, and we're looking around the kind of 7.7, 8 million pound mark, I think there's kind of like 4 standout players, because the problem with players like Saka now, maybe even Martinelli, etc., is Arsenal have got loads of blanks coming up. Maddison would have been an option if he doubled, but he didn't. So I don't know until Leicester double whether we really need to get him in. If you've got a bit of money, I really like the option of buying Phil Foden. I think Man City's fixtures from game week 23 to 25 are really good. Now, whether or not Foden is nailed right now, I think that's a hard conversation or a hard question to answer, because at times this season he has been nailed, but then there's been injuries, and then he's had like COVID. Well, he was out ill, not fit or whatever. We assume it was probably COVID. But I guess in the same way, if Man City is still missing some players for next game, you'd imagine he will start, right? He started the last game against Chelsea. So I do like Foden if you're confident that he starts 3 games. There's always a risk with Man City players that he misses one of those games. And then you've kind of got the players that I talked about yesterday, so like Rafinha and Coutinho. Personally, I think if you're going to get both those players in, then I think Rafinha has a better fixture this week, and then you can maybe look at Coutinho the week after, because we still don't quite know whether he's up to full match fitness, whether he's going to be able to start games week in, week out as well. And obviously, I guess Bowen as well has just scored another goal. Maybe not the ideal week to bring him in because it's Man United, but then Man United have just conceded twice to Aston Villa. So who knows? You could even bring in Bowen this week if you don't own him. So there's no real great reason to hold on to Mount now. The fixtures aren't great, and there's lots of good players to replace him with. I do think Foden is probably the standout, but Coutinho and Bowen and Rafinha, etc., are all good as well. I actually think, thinking about those players I've just mentioned, all of them are good. Potentially, as long as they keep getting minutes, and that's mostly around Coutinho. Like, if you're going to have you could potentially have Foden, Coutinho, Rafinha, and Bowen, and maybe Salah as well. Maybe it's time to start thinking about 5-man midfields, because up front, you've got Calvert-Lewin hasn't been doing great, although Everton do have fixtures to rearrange and some good fixtures and a new manager potentially that's going to make them play better, possibly. Bamford's still not back. I don't think most people want to hold on to players like Ronaldo right now. Okay, you could have like a Watford forward, maybe Antonio, maybe Watkins, players like this. But right now, and things switch quickly, because if you remember on the free hit, we were like, well, there's hardly, for game week 22, there's hardly any midfielders, there's loads of forwards. I actually think going forward in, no pun intended, for the next few game weeks, midfield is probably where it's at. So you don't want to make like a rash decision and massively change all your money from forwards to midfielders and use loads of transfers to do it. But it might be worth thinking about starting to build that way, because obviously 4 at the back and stuff like that has worked really well this season. But Chelsea defenders now aren't options. You've got Cancelo and Trent, and then you pick after that who you want. I think a move possibly to 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 kind of permanently-ish over the next few weeks, depending on, double game weeks if they get rearranged and stuff like that, could be the move, and that starts with getting rid of Mason Mount. If you got other stuff to do, fair enough, but otherwise he's a good player to get rid of this week. So Connor Cody, once a man that wasn't even allowed to go out for corners, has now scored, I think it's 2 goals so far this season. Obviously just scored this weekend, which is probably where a lot of these transfers have come in. And I do kind of rate Wolves' defence in general. I think they're pretty good. They've got a good goalkeeper. They will keep clean sheets, but I don't like the look of this fixture run, right? So from game week 24 to 27, they've got Arsenal, Spurs, Leicester, West Ham. So straight away, I'm thinking like Saka, Martinelli, Kane, maybe Son's back. You've got Vardy, Maddison. Obviously, if Vardy's back as well, if not Daka, etc. And then West Ham, Antonio, Bowen. They're all attacks that could score against Wolves. Now, I don't think Wolves necessarily get beat in all these games. I don't necessarily think they concede a huge amount of goals, but I do think keeping clean sheets over this period will be fairly difficult. Now, realistically, for a 4.6 million defender as a squad player, who, if you have to play him because there's postponements or whatever, injuries and stuff like that, you could play him in these fixtures. It's not that bad of an option, right? I fully get that. But I think for a lot of people, if I think where the FPL template kind of was and where it's going, again, Chelsea defenders are still in a lot of people's teams. So people selling them, unless you really need a lot of cash to spend on your attack. And again, we've just talked about like Foden and Coutinho and Rafinha. These are all cheap midfielders. And if we're not going for Ronaldo and Salah or whatever it might be, I don't know, Fernandes and Salah, De Bruyne and Salah, then I don't know why you would need that money. There's probably other defenders with maybe better fixtures right now. Luka Dean possibly at Villa, Cucurella for Brighton if you can get away with a blank in Game Week 24, I think it is as well. So I don't know if now is the time to buy Wolves defenders outside of like really needing an enabler or something like that. And if you need an enabler, I probably wouldn't buy Cody, although obviously he's nailed on, right? He's started every single game so far this season. He's played 90 minutes in every one, apart from one, I think. I'd probably go for Aït-Nouri. He's pretty much got that kind of left back, left wing back spot locked down. Obviously, he played it from Game Week 9 all the way to 16. The only reason he didn't play here is because he was injured. So I think against Man United, he was back on the bench. And obviously then that was off the back of an injury. And then against Southampton, he comes straight in, gets 2 assists as well. So as an attacking kind of threat, I think Aït-Nouri is probably a little bit better than Cody. Obviously, goals are worth more than assists. But, you know, if you're a defender, you get a clean sheet, you get an assist. There's also bonus points there as well. So I think, although Cody's cheap at 4.6 million, if you are thinking about going for him, I think I'd rather have Aït-Nouri. I think maybe obviously they had a really bad fixture run, right? This is when a lot of us owned Jimenez and we got rid of him. The fixture run has been really bad, and it is a little bit better now. And I would expect Wolves to get some clean sheets with these fixtures, but I just think if it's a player you have to play every week, there's probably better options. So the only reason I would go for Aït-Nouri is if you're going for an enabler to then enable, of course, more money to be spent elsewhere. Could be defense or on attack. I just don't think I'd be buying Cody. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake. But I think you just save 0.3 million and get the more attacking player out wide instead. All right, let's talk about Saint-Maximin. Obviously, got his goal at the weekend. 6.6 million now. Still owned by over 10% of FPL managers and has had 65,000 transfers in so far. Underlying numbers are still just okay. They're nothing special. The fixture run, I don't know what to make of this fixture run. I think it's okay. I don't think it's great, but it's all right. Like, Leeds away isn't a bad fixture. Everton at home, like the defence for Everton just has not been good. We'll have to wait and see which manager they bring in, or whether it gets given to Ferguson for maybe the end of the season, or maybe for a few weeks while they work on a manager. Who knows? But the defence hasn't been great. So Everton's not even that bad of a fixture. Villa and West Ham are a little bit more difficult. But for 6.6 million, I think Saint-Maximin's okay. The only thing is, I think Chris Wood is a better option, right? Chris Wood is 6.7, so it's not even like a massive price difference. And while Wilson's out, you assume that Chris Wood has been brought in to play. And even his kind of own underlying numbers, expected goals and stuff like that, wasn't that bad in his first game for Newcastle. I know he didn't score, but I think he's the one that I would probably go for if I was buying a Newcastle forward. I think ultimately, around the kind of 7.5 million mark for forwards, there isn't a huge amount of options, right? I'm looking down the list of names. You've got like Daka, but how long is he going to be nailed on for? Richarlison, I think most people would just go for Calvert-Lewin if they're going that way. Obviously, Pookie we won't get into. Tony, these are just not players that kind of inspire too much kind of confidence in points. So ideally, maybe you take out the money of defence by going for Aït-Nouri or Cody and spend a bit more. You got the likes of Watkins, Antonio, Calvert-Lewin, who are probably all a little bit better. So ultimately, I don't think Saint-Maximin's a great transfer in, because I think the forward spots, there's only 3 of them, and I think as much as there aren't a huge amount of options, which is why I've just talked about 3-5-2, there are better options than Saint-Maximin, and in my opinion, there's even a better option at the same club in Chris Wood. We'll have to see how it goes, but Chris Wood is a forward that pretty much always bangs in 10 plus goals a season, and his underlying stats are always good, and I would probably see Newcastle as a slightly better attacking team than Burnley as well, so he might get a few more chances. So yeah, if you're buying a Newcastle forward, I know it's boring, but I think Chris Wood might be better than Saint-Maximin. There we go. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the players on this list. Can I convince anyone to go for Chris Wood over Saint-Maximin? Probably not. What do you think of Wolves defenders? And what are you doing with Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount? Let me know below. If you did enjoy the video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. I'm probably going to wait to do team selection until after the games are finished. So I'll probably do that on Thursday. So I might do some kind of game week preview video tomorrow instead. So look out for that. Give this one a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And I'll catch you again soon.